A simple woman solved what 10 engineers couldn't. What happened next left everyone speechless. When Peton Manufacturing's 50-year-old press machine died, costing $50,000 daily, brilliant minds failed. But sometimes wisdom doesn't come from textbooks or fancy degrees. Sometimes it comes from calloused hands and a sharp eye. This is Delila May Thompson's story, and it'll change how you see expertise forever. The factory floor buzzed with frustrated whispers and clicking keyboards. Peton Manufacturing's crown jewel, a massive industrial press that had turned out automotive parts for half a century, sat silent like a sleeping giant. Its digital displays flickered mockingly, taunting the engineers who'd spent 3 weeks trying to resurrect it. "Run the diagnostic again," barked William Bill Cartwright, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the morning chill. As chief engineer, Bill's reputation hung by a thread thinner than piano wire. Jake McNeil wiped grease from his hands, shaking his head. "Same error codes, Bill. Nothing's making sense." His voice cracked with exhaustion. Dark circles under his eyes told the story of sleepless nights spent hunched over circuit boards and computer screens. Cody Brennan emerged from beneath the machine, coveralls stained black. "Hydraulics are perfect. Pneumatics check out. Even replaced the main control board twice." He threw his wrench into the toolbox with a metallic clang that echoed through the cavernous space. Buck Harrison, the grizzled foreman with 30 years under his belt, crossed his arms. "Boys, we're hemorrhaging money faster than a busted fire hydrant. Corporate's breathing down my neck like hungry wolves." Travis Holbrook, fresh from engineering school with his crisp polo shirt still unwrinkled, pulled up holographic blueprints on his tablet. "Maybe we're overthinking this. Let me cross-read." "Efference, the original specifications with—" "Son," Buck interrupted, his weathered face creasing into a grimace. "We've cross-referenced everything twice. This machine's got more diagnostics run on it than a hypochondriac at a medical convention." The overhead speakers crackled to life. "Attention floor personnel. Mr. Peton requests immediate status update in conference room B. Harrison J. Peton III, great-grandson of the company's founder, waited in his corner office overlooking the factory floor. His usually immaculate silver hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit looked slept in. Financial reports spread across his mahogany desk like battle plans, each page bearing increasingly dire projections. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of 3 generations. "Consolidated Motors just called. If we don't deliver their order by Friday, they're canceling our contract. That's $2 million walking out the door." Bill shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we've exhausted every conventional approach. Maybe it's time to—" "Time to what?" Peton's eyes flashed. "Admit defeat? Tell my grandfather's legacy customers that we can't fix our own equipment?" The room fell silent, except for the distant hum of functioning machinery, a cruel reminder of what they'd lost. "There's one option left," Buck said quietly, pulling a business card from his shirt pocket. "Delila May Thompson. She specializes in vintage industrial equipment." The rumble of a pickup truck engine cut through the morning air as Delila May Thompson pulled into Peton's parking lot. Her weathered Ford, paint faded but engine purring, looked out of place among the sleek sedans and SUVs. She killed the engine and sat for a moment, studying the imposing brick building through her windshield. At 35, Delila carried herself with quiet confidence, earned through years of proving herself in a man's world. Her calloused hands told stories of countless repairs, while her sharp green eyes missed nothing. Today she'd pulled her chestnut hair into a practical, messy bun and chosen her most professional work clothes, a clean grey t-shirt and her best pair of jeans, the ones without oil stains. She grabbed her worn leather tool bag and headed toward the factory entrance, white sneakers silent against the asphalt. The security guard, a grandfatherly man with kind eyes, looked up from his crossword puzzle. "You must be the specialist they're expecting," he said, buzzing her through. "Good luck in there, miss. They sure could use some." The factory floor hit her like a wave of familiar sensations. The metallic tang of cutting oil, the rhythmic hum of machinery, the underlying smell of honest work. It reminded her of weekend visits to her father's shop, where she'd learned to read machines like other kids read picture books. Buck Harrison approached with measured steps, his skepticism barely concealed behind professional courtesy. "Miss Thompson, I'm Buck Harrison, floor supervisor." His handshake was firm but brief, testing. "Just Delilah's fine," she replied, her voice steady and warm. "Where's the patient?" As they walked deeper into the factory, conversations quieted. Workers paused their tasks to steal glances at the woman in jeans walking among million-dollar equipment. Some faces showed curiosity, others barely masked doubt. "That's her," Jake whispered to Cody near the water cooler. "She looks like she should be fixing lawn mowers, not industrial presses." Cody shrugged. "Desperate times, man. Besides, my grandmother always said, never judge a book by its cover." They reached the silent press and Delila stopped short. Her breath caught slightly, not from intimidate. Ion, but recognition. This wasn't just any machine. It was a Titan Series 7, manufactured in 1973. She'd grown up around these giants. "Well, I'll be," she murmured, approaching the press like greeting an old friend. "Haven't seen one of these beauties in years." Bill Cartwright emerged from behind a computer terminal, laptop in hand. "Miss Thompson, I'm William Cartwright, Chief Engineer. I've prepared detailed diagnostic reports, error logs, and—" Delila held up a gentle hand. "Appreciate that, Bill. But first, mind if I just listen?" Delila circled the massive press like a detective studying a crime scene. While the engineers huddled around their tablets and printouts, she used older tools, her eyes, ears, and instincts honed through decades of mechanical intuition. "What exactly are you listening for?" Travis asked, his young voice tinged with genuine curiosity rather than skepticism. "Every machine has a voice," Delila explained, pressing her palm against the steel housing. "When they're healthy, they sing. When they're sick," she paused, tilting her head, "they whisper secrets." She knelt beside the base, running her fingers along weld seams that had held firm for 50 years. The factory's background noise faded as she focused. The distant whir of ventilation, the occasional pneumatic hiss, the subtle vibrations traveling through the concrete floor. "Bill, when this baby was running right, did she ever have a slight wobble during the compression cycle?" Delila asked without looking up. Bill consulted his notes. "Well, yes, actually, about a quarter-inch deviation, but within acceptable tolerances, according to—" Delilah's fingers found something the others had missed. A hairline crack in the mounting bracket, barely visible beneath decades of paint and grime. "And I bet that wobble got worse over the past few months, right?" The engineers exchanged glances. How could she know that? "Buck, you got a trouble light I can borrow?" Delila asked. As Buck fetched the portable lamp, Delila removed a small mirror from her tool bag, the kind dentists used, but this one was scratched and worn from years of peering into tight spaces. "What we've got here," she said, angling the mirror to catch light beneath the press, "is what my daddy used to call foundation fatigue. See, everyone's been looking at the fancy electronics up top, but they forgot about the bones holding everything together." She pointed to stress fractures spiderwebbing through the concrete foundation, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look and had the right angle. 50 years of compression cycles, Delila continued, her voice taking on the rhythm of a storyteller. 2 billion pounds of pressure, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Even the strongest foundation gets tired eventually. Cody crouched beside her, following her pointing finger. "I see it now, but how does foundation damage cause electronic failures?" Delila smiled, the expression of a teacher whose student just asked the right question. "When the foundation shifts, even by millimeters, it throws off the machine's alignment. Sensors start giving false readings. The computer thinks something's wrong when really the machine's just settling into a new position." She stood, wiping her hands on a shop rag. "It's like wearing shoes that don't fit quite right. You can walk, but everything hurts after a while. The machine's been compensating for months, overworking systems that should run smooth as butter." Travis looked confused. "But our diagnostics would have caught alignment issues." "Would they?" Delila challenged gently. "Your diagnostics check what the sensors tell them, but what if the sensors themselves are in the wrong position?" A pregnant silence fell over T. He Group. 40 years of combined engineering experience, thousands of dollars in diagnostic equipment, and they'd been chasing symptoms instead of the disease. "So, Buck said slowly. If we're reading you right, the electronics aren't broken at all. Delila shook her head. Nope, they're working exactly like they're supposed to for a machine that's out of alignment. Fix the foundation, recalibrate the sensors, and she'll purr like a kitten again. The simplicity of it was stunning and slightly embarrassing. Hold on now, Bill interjected, his engineering pride stinging. Foundation work means shutting down for weeks. Jackhammers, concrete pours, curing time. We'd miss every deadline from here to Christmas. Delila's eyes twinkled with the kind of mischief that comes from knowing something others don't. Who said anything about tearing up the foundation? She walked to her truck and returned with a hydraulic jack. Not the massive industrial kind they expected, but something that looked like it belonged in an auto repair shop. The engineers watched in bewildered silence as she also produced several steel shims of varying thicknesses. My daddy taught me this trick back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, Delila said, positioning the jack at a specific point beneath the press. Sometimes you don't fix the foundation, you work with it. You're going to jack up a 50-ton machine? Travis asked, his voice climbing an octave. Not the whole machine, son, just nudge it back into proper alignment. She began pumping the jack handle with practiced ease. See, when this foundation settled, it created a slight tilt. We're talking fractions of an inch, but in precision work, that might as well be the Grand Canyon. The massive press groaned softly as the jack took up tension. Delila monitored several reference points she'd marked with chalk, making tiny adjustments with the patience of a watchmaker. Cody, mind hitting that power switch? She asked casually. You want me to turn it on while you're... Trust me. Cody hesitated, then flipped the switch. The press hummed to life, but instead of the grinding, struggling sounds they'd grown accustomed to, it purred with mechanical contentment. Well, I'll be damned, Buck whispered. Delila wasn't finished. She slid steel shims beneath the mounting points, each one precisely measured. These will hold the adjustment permanent. Think of them as reading glasses for an old machine, just helping it see straight again. She worked methodically, explaining each step in language that stripped away unnecessary complexity. Hydraulic pressure here, sensor recalibration there, and just a touch more support where the foundation's weakest. The transformation was remarkable. Error codes disappeared from screens like morning mist. Warning lights switched from angry red to peaceful green. The press began its test cycle with smooth, confident movements that spoke of machinery operating in perfect harmony. How did you know exactly where to make the adjustments? Jake asked, genuine admiration replacing his earlier skepticism. Experience, Delila replied simply. Plus, I grew up around these machines. My daddy worked on the assembly line that built this very model. Used to bring me to the factory on Saturdays when he pulled overtime. I probably saw a dozen of these presses go from brand new to broken in. She packed her tools with the same methodical care she'd used to deploy them. These old machines, they're like people. They get set in their ways, develop little quirks and preferences. You can't just diagnose them with computers. You got to listen to their stories. Travis shook his head in wonder. 3 weeks of diagnostics and you fixed it with a car jack and some shims. Sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones, Delila said, shouldering her tool bag. Fancy doesn't always mean better. The press completed its test cycle with a satisfying chunk as the hydraulics locked into position, the sound that had been missing for 3 weeks. The sound of productivity, of purpose, of a job well done. Harrison J. Peton III appeared on the factory floor, drawn by reports of the press running again. His expression shifted from skepticism to amazement as he watched his most critical machine operate flawlessly. Miss Thompson, he said, extending his hand, I believe we need to talk. The conference room felt different this time. Instead of crisis and desperation, the air buzzed with relief and possibility. Delila sat at the polished table, still in her work clothes, surrounded by men in button-down shirts and ties who now looked at her with newfound respect. In 40 years of manufacturing, Peton began, I've never seen anything quite like what happened out there. 3 weeks, 10 engineers, and you solved it in what? 2 hours? Hour and 47 minutes, Buck corrected with a grin. But who's counting? Delila shrugged modestly. Sometimes fresh eyes see what familiar ones miss. Y'all were thinking like engineers, which ain't wrong, mind you. I was just thinking like the machine. Bill Cartwright leaned forward, his earlier defensiveness replaced by curiosity. I have to ask, where did you learn that technique? I've never seen foundation adjustment done that way. Necessity, Delila replied. Small shops can't afford to tear up foundations every time something settles. You learn to adapt, improvise, make do with what you've got. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Their sophisticated approaches had been outmaneuvered by practical wisdom earned in countless small-town repair shops. The question now, Peton continued, is what comes next? We've got a contract to fulfill thanks to you. But more importantly, we've got other machines that are almost as old as this press. Delila raised an eyebrow. You offering me a job, Mr. Peton? I'm offering you a position as our senior mechanical consultant, competitive salary, benefits, and the authority to implement preventive maintenance programs that actually work. Travis spoke up. What would you change first? Well, Delila said thoughtfully, I'd start by teaching y'all to listen to your machines. They'll tell you when something's wrong long before any computer diagnostic will. And I'd implement what I call wisdom rounds, regular checkups that combine sensor data with hands-on assessment. Cody nodded enthusiastically, like preventive medicine for machines. Exactly. Delila's smile was warm and inclusive. Technology is wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it works best when it partners with experience, not replaces it. Peton extended his hand across the table. Miss Thompson, I'd be honored to have you join our team permanently. Delila looked around the room at faces that had transformed from skeptical to respectful. She thought about her father, who taught her that honest work deserved honest recognition. Mr. Peton, she said, standing to shake his hand, I believe we've got ourselves a deal. 6 months later, Peton Manufacturing hummed with renewed efficiency. Delila's office, a glass-walled space overlooking the factory floor, displayed an unusual combination of high-tech monitoring equipment and old-fashioned mechanical tools. She stood at her window, watching Jake and Travis work together on a routine maintenance check. This young engineer had learned to appreciate the wisdom in Jake's weathered hands, while Jake had discovered that modern diagnostics could enhance rather than replace intuitive understanding. The quarterly reports came in, Buck announced, entering with a satisfied grin. Production's up 18%, downtime's down 34%, and we haven't had a major equipment failure since Delila arrived, Bill finished, joining them. His relationship with Delila had evolved into mutual respect and collaborative partnership. I'll admit I was skeptical at first. We all were, Buck replied honestly, but sometimes being wrong feels pretty good. Through the glass, they watched Cody training a new hire, a young woman fresh from technical college. The sight would have been unusual just months ago, but Delila's presence had shifted the factory's culture in subtle but meaningful ways. You know what I'm proudest of? Delila asked, not turning from the window. What's that? Bill inquired. Look at them down there. Travis is learning that textbook knowledge gets better when you add real-world wisdom. Jake's discovering that his experience becomes more powerful when supported by data. They're not competing anymore. They're collaborating. A soft knock interrupted them. Harrison Peton entered carrying a leather portfolio that looked expensive enough to fund a small country. Delila, I've just gotten off the phone with 3 other manufacturing companies. Word's gotten around about our turnaround, and they want to know if you'd be willing to consult on their operations. Delila turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we expand Peton Manufacturing Solutions with you heading up our new consulting division. Help other companies bridge the gap between old-school wisdom and new-school technology. She looked back at the factory floor where the massive press continued its steady work. No longer just repaired but optimized. The machine that had nearly bankrupted the company now represented something larger, proof that innovation could honor tradition while embracing progress. Mr. Peton, Delila said with a smile that held decades of quiet confidence, I think it's time to teach the world how to listen. What did you think of Delila's story? Sometimes the most powerful solutions come from the most unexpected places. Have you ever witnessed someone solve a problem that stumped the experts? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear about times when experience trumped education. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments.